Welcome to another episode of Comedy Wham Presents, and welcome to the 2021 Summer Vacation Series. We're getting to know comics from around the world who performed or helped put on the isolation comedy online shows back in 2020. I'm your host, Valerie, and sometime co-host Miss Purrington will join us if she damn well wants. ComedyWham.com is your place to go for features about all Austin comedy. You can keep up with us on Twitter and Instagram at Comedy Wham, our Comedy Wham Facebook page, and YouTube channel. In addition to podcasts, Comedy Wham brings you articles, album reviews, live shows, and an events page for live shows in Austin and Houston. If you're a comic in those cities and want your show featured on the calendar, go to the events page and click Submit a Show to complete the short survey. Now let's get back to our podcast. Launched in 2016, the Podcast Project brings you funny people and their stories. As a fan, I like to delve into a comic's background and motivations, and we usually take a detour along the way. Consider the interview a way for you to get to know the folks that make the Austin, the world's comedy scene thriving and amazing. If you like this podcast, please rate and review us. Today we are traveling all the way to Melbourne, Australia. Our guest is on the ABC local radio's Overnights with Trevor Chappell every second Tuesday at the ungodly for Australians time of 2:30 a.m., but that actually works out to 11:30 a.m. here in Austin. She's also one half of the cult comedy duo Cinema Fiasco, along with internationally renowned comedy improviser Jeff Wallace. She's the host of the weekly trivia nights around Melbourne, and she's since pivoted to online trivia events for pretty much anyone around the world. And she runs Local Laughs, which is a weekly show, and it's the longest running comedy room with a sole booker in the world at an impressive 18 years, I believe. And without her, we wouldn't have had Ryan Coffey, Dane Simpson, and the great Rusty Burther on our online comedy show. Even though she wasn't on the show, she made those things happen. And she is one of my favorites because we found out that we are almost like twins when it comes to running shows and knowing about the comedy world behind the scenes. And now, Comedy Wham presents our guest, Janet McLeod.
Hello, hello,
Hi.
hello. How nice to meet you here in cyberspace.
I know, right?
In the ether, here we are. We're in the future.
That's right. You are the future.
We are the future.
Bright and early at 10:30 a.m. while I'm recording Saturday night. So it is
Yep.
weird that I'm in the evening, you're in the morning, you're about to get ready for your day, and I'm about to zonk out.
Yeah, you're in the past. All I can say is that it was a great night. So you're in for a good one. I really liked it.
Very good. Janet, it is so exciting to actually get a conversation with you. I remember because of our mismatched, obviously with you being in Australia and me being in Austin, we would have random conversations and
At different times of the day and night.
and we'd each say, "Look, it's near midnight. I gotta go."
So funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is, I mean, one of the big things at the moment, or for the last year, has been working out the different time zones. So thank goodness there's a website that I love, Time and Date Converter, and
Yeah.
it gives you the multiples. You just plug in what time your gig is, and then it'll give you can put in for different cities throughout the
Yeah.
world, and that way you don't have to do too much maths. It'll just do it for you.
Yeah, that was very cool because I booked somebody to talk to in London, and I wanted to make sure that they knew, exactly what
Yeah,
time it would be. So it was great. It was really, that's a cool little tool. They're
it's
amazing tools on the computer.
I also like being able to go into different time zones. One of my regular trivia gigs at the moment is for the Australian Army, and so I'm doing trivia into Gulf Standard Time. So I did one show, and there was somebody in there's one team like in Afghanistan, one team in Iraq, one team in South Sudan, and one in Saudi Arabia. So, I like
Wow.
doing that. One of
Yeah.
my one of my favorite gigs last year was when I had my regular comedy night online, so Local Laughs,
Uh-huh.
which is a very long running live show, as you mentioned. Then it was the first comedy room in Australia to transition to going online.
Mm-hmm.
So it was live via Zoom. So I just charged a ticket price and hey ho presto.
Yeah.
And so there was one where it started off with me in Melbourne, and then we went up to Steph Tisdale in Brisbane, which is up in the top part of Australia, and then over to uh, let's see, Aditi Mittal in Mumbai, down to Rachel Berger in Tasmania, up to uh, let's see, over to Snurleg Ludvigsdotter in Reykjavik, then to Joanne Calm in Kuala Lumpur, to Sakdia Maroof in Jakarta, and then to Geraldine Quinn back in Melbourne. So,
My
and
goodness.
it was all women. It was great.
Yeah.
It was the best virtual green room. So, because I always create a little breakout room in Zoom so that
Yeah.
we'll have a green room, so everybody will be funneled off there afterward after the gig. So
Yeah.
we all have it's like a regular comedian's green room. It's great.
Yeah, we did something like that with our online show. We would let some trusted comedy fans come into the Zoom room, but largely it was just the green room with the comics, and it was always so much fun. I want to comment though before we get too far. Uh, I not only love that story for you talking about the international bookings
Mm.
that you had, but just how easy you made it come
Oh.
off the way you say it, all of these international comics names, because that is not an
Well,
easy task.
well, that's one of the things I like to do. I like to be able to spell everybody's names no matter what. When they say, "Oh, just call me blah," and I go, "No, no, 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 no.
Yeah,
I'm getting your name right. Let me assure you. I mean,
yeah,
I can. I know that I'm almost saying Snurleg's name correctly. It's close. It's an Icelandic name, so Snurleg
yeah,
Ludvig's daughter. It's sorry, Snurleg. I'm really making a dog's breakfast of it, but it's close.
yeah, yeah. No, it
I
was
love it.
very impressive. Janet, I do something with my podcasts to kick off. We've already kicked off. We know each other, but I do have a formal icebreaker question.
Mhm.
Are you ready?
I'm ready as all over me. Here we go.
All right. It is one word to describe your past.
Varied. That'll do.
That'll do. Very quick. You're very quick on your feet. Um, what what is your earliest memory about comedy?
Oh, maybe let's go back into childhood. I remember I think it must have been my seventh birthday party. I was There was one of the boys at the party was cracking jokes, and we went, "Oh, he is so funny." So he was he Ward was great. Ward gave me a little blue bag for a present that I still own.
Oh my
And
gosh.
oh well, if only I wouldn't it be great? What a great story it would have been if I had said, "And now he's my husband." No,
Yeah.
he's not. And and thinking back, I think Ward was probably gay. It was just such a great kid, and he
Uh-huh.
got on so well with the girls, and he was just amazing and very funny. And so the Oscar Wilde of the
Hmm.
6-year-old set.
Yeah.
But that's one of my earliest things of going, he's really funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
And then how did what were your life, what was your path? I feel like I really am talking
where did it all happen? I
yeah.
think that it was watching varying TV shows and really liking there's one TV show in Australia that had and they included the people who were in the crew as part of the gags,
Yeah.
because it was just them in the studio, and so suddenly the stage manager or the floor manager was a character and things like that, and I started to think about the way a TV show worked,
Huh.
and so whenever you saw through into the breaking the fourth wall stuff, then I really liked that, and I began to enjoy subversion. So,
Ah.
and that's what comedy does a lot. It subverts.
Yeah.
Uh, so that theoretical side started to seep in, and there was a show in the 80s, because I'm 50. How old am I? 53, 54 this next weekend, and in the 80s there was a show called Australia, You're Standing in It, and it it was again it was on our national broadcaster, the ABC. Uh, so at my school, for the first series of that show, it was pretty much me and the teachers who were watching it. The other kids hadn't cottoned onto it, because
Ah.
they weren't. It wasn't until there was catchphrases or running jokes that they started to get it in about the second series. But there was a couple of characters on it who were called Tim and Debbie, and Tim and Debbie were very different because they weren't uh like stereotypes. Well, they were stereotypes, but they weren't stock standard comedy characters. It wasn't like, and now it's the postman, or and how what about the funny butcher, or it's the neighbor next door. They were contemporary characters. They were wankers. They were artsy wankers. So in Melbourne, I know I've said inner city before, and people go, oh, kind of like slum areas. No, inner city Melbourne, like the inner suburbs, are very
Hmm.
trendy. So, so think of the trendy suburb, the
Okay.
trendy artsy suburb. It was like artsy wankers from there. And
Okay.
so they were like, oh yeah, yeah, that's a really amazing concept. And so, and that's how they used to speak, Tim and Debbie, like, it's like amazing was the way they spoke. And they were, and so I would do a Debbie impersonation, and the teachers thought that was hilarious, and I think that's where it really
Ah.
started, that. And one of the best things is that the woman who behind Debbie, Mary Keneally, is a friend of mine now. So, and
Oh
even
my gosh.
when I'm speaking to her, then this 14-year-old Janet is still going, I'm so impressed. And that's the funny thing, is that there's a lot of these people who are my comedy heroes who are friends and
Yeah.
contemporaries now.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think that's one of the things that you and I connected on when we realized, through our work at putting shows together, and for me, podcasting, you end up getting to be friends with some of the comics, and they're not just people that you see on
Yeah.
stage.
And also, when you've been around for as long as me,
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
then your friend list is populated by this extraordinary number uh of comedians, and from everybody from um relatively unknown to world famous. So it's
Yeah.
this strange connections, the connections that you can make. And I'm one of those people who I'm a connector. I love to connect people.
Uh-huh.
And so I guess the term I was given, the title I was given, but was by New Zealand comedian Cal Wilson, who lives in Australia now. She's been living here for 20 years. And she called me in an interview once the fairy godmother of Melbourne comedy. And that has stuck. So,
That makes sense.
well, and for the podcasters who cannot see me right now, I am wearing, I've got rainbow eyeshadow, and I'm wearing glitter, and I'm surrounded by fairy lights, so I look
Yeah.
like a fairy godmother. So that also helps, I suppose.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, I love to introduce people to their heroes, and um, help somebody get a leg up,
Yeah.
because that's often all it takes, is somebody say, "Oh, I can help you with that. I can connect you to that person." And then
Yeah.
push them off and see what happens.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we will get to that in a moment. I want to find out, what was your first performance? What got you to the first stage?
Oh, first comedy step. I theatre sports, so improvised stuff. So improv theatre games, theatre sports
Yeah.
games.
Yeah,
So
you seem very theatrical.
and
So,
I wasn't. That's the interesting thing. Oh well,
ah,
you know what? I started when at school we had a fancy dress day and costume day, and I went as a punk. And but what? So I don't know. I had the sweater dresses were all the rage. They were premium trend stuff,
uh-huh,
and so I borrowed an old jumper of my mother's that was too big, and it looked like a sweater dress, and I blue tacked some safety pins to my ears because I didn't have pierced ears,
uh-huh.
and then I had crimped hair that was teased up a bit and looked really big, and I wore sunglasses. And that was a punk, but everybody responded really positively
Uh-huh.
and said, "Oh wow, you look really cool," and I'd never been cool before, so that was what a novelty. And
Yeah.
so the next free dress day, we could just wear your regular clothes. I kind of pushed the edge a little bit, and so I started to do that. I started to dress creatively and come up with a style, and so just that little bit of outward theatricality led into me getting into the theatre sports lot, and there was such a wonderful supportive group of people in my hometown of Ballarat, and the support that I got there meant that I was very shy. I was a really
Huh.
shy child,
Wow.
and so it helped me to overcome some of that shyness and just be a bit more daring and therefore a little bit more, yeah, a bit more theatrical, not so worried on stage.
Yeah.
And but for straight out, you know, stand-up comedy sort of stuff, I was backstage at a gig before the gig, and it was like an open micy sort of thing, and the MC said, "Oh, half the people who have signed up haven't turned up. Oh no! Do you have any? Do you know any jokes?" And I went, "Oh, a couple." And he said, "All right, you're on in the third bracket." I went, "Oh, okay. When's that?" "Oh, about 45 minutes time." "Oh, okay. I better go write a routine." So that's what I did. It was a 5 minute, 5 minutes. I just went out to my car. I had some, silly props and things out there, and wrote a 5 minute routine about that.
Oh my gosh.
And that was it.
Your first stand-up was basically somebody volunteering you right then
Yeah.
and there. Oh my
And I went,
gosh.
well, and I didn't know any different. I just went, "Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, I'll do that." So,
Jump into this fire, Janet.
well,
Okay.
it's like improv, it's
Yeah.
like, yes, and. So
Yeah,
I went,
sure.
"Yeah, I'll do that." And so it was, so that was but then I didn't do any, stand-up for another, I don't know, year or so. And then the next one I did, I think a friend had dared me to take the biggest thing that I could fit into my car on stage with me. And if I took the back seat out of my car, it was a tiny little car. It was like it was called a Honda Scamp. A Honda Scamp. It was the Honda answer to
That's
a
so
mid.
quaint.
It was so cute. And it was a two-cylinder car. I kid you not. Two cylinders
My
of
gosh.
600 cc's of red hot pumping power. And if I took out the back seat, then I could kind of thread this big buffy brown vinyl armchair into the back. And so I went, "Oh, I'll take that on stage with me." So I created a routine where I had a fight sequence with this armchair.
Oh my gosh.
Where, I'm sitting down, I'm going, "Oh," the gag is supposed to be, "Oh, everybody does stand-up comedy. I'm going to do sit-down comedy. Ha, ha, ha," whatever. And, uh, and then the chair kept tipping me out. And eventually I was going, "Right, I've had enough of this. You stay here." And that was the sound guy. That was his cue to start some music. So it was just that the beginning of O Fortuna as it sort of duh, 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 duh. So it just in the build up.
Yeah.
So and when it came to the ba 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 ba, I've come back on stage. I was sort of Rambo-esque with some, makeup on my face and headband and muscle shirt and a hockey stick, and I started to have this fight with the armchair and eventually impaling it, pulling out blood and guts, standing triumphant on setting it on fire and standing triumphant above it as the music reaches a crescendo. And the audience, who are just there at an open mic stand-up show, you've just gone, "Wah!"
Yeah.
Exploded.
My gosh.
So
I bet you they remember that.
yeah, they remember that. And then the following month, then I got rebooked. And the following month, it was monthly gig at that stage. And the following month, I decided I'd make up with the armchair. And so it was a dance sequence. Now, Strictly Ballroom had just come out, that great Australian movie, Strictly Ballroom. The Kitchers All Get Out Australian movie had just come out. And so I did a dance sequence to one of the main songs in it, Lovers in the Air. Lovers in the air. Du, 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 du. And so that one was such a hit, this dance routine that I did with it. This stupid brown vinyl armchair.
Wow.
With scorch marks on it from the previous show. And where once again, I've run off stage, come back, I'm wearing a ballroom dancing skirt, real quick change stuff. Begin the dance routine and, do a spin around with the chair. The chair is fully sequined at the back with a little number on it.
Oh my gosh.
And, doing just all these things and doing walkovers and, it's just...
Were you in Melbourne at this point?
Yes.
Okay, so you had already come to Melbourne, and I have no concept of the comedy universe in Australia. From where you were to your hometown, where you grew up, to Melbourne, was that like a big change in scenery for you?
It was. It was just going from Ballarat's a country city, I suppose. It's not it's like, what is it? 80. It was probably about 60,000 people back then, and podcast people. I'm being distracted because I can see Valerie at the moment. Her cat's just walked across. Classic Zoom.
Yeah.
And so Ballarat, so from Ballarat to Melbourne, which is, a proper city, millions in it, then was those differences there. And the Ballarat scene was very supportive, and in Melbourne it was more competitive.
Okay.
So the improv scene in Melbourne was still, pretty supportive, but the stand-up scene was different type of personality attracted to that.
Yeah. And for comparison, for anybody who's listening and thinking about their own comedy scenes in Melbourne, how many clubs do you have, and how many shows a night or a week could people see?
What do we got at the moment? It's mostly comedy rooms, like as in, temporary rooms in pubs. But there's quite a look. I'm looking up a gig guide just to give you an idea. So there's a couple of permanent clubs.
Yeah.
That run more than, they're specific comedy clubs. But then here we go. Here's a gig guide. Oh, this is probably not indicative because we're in lockdown at the moment. But there's generally at least, 3, 4, generally at least 4, 5 shows per night somewhere.
Yeah.
In Melbourne.
Yeah.
So they're varying ones. Like they could be open mic or they could be ticketed ones, pro level ones, great big ones. Like the last show I saw before our current lockdown was Tim Minchin. So Australian treasure, Tim Minchin. And I remember when he was nothing. I remember before he went off to Edinburgh, he was taken to Edinburgh in 2005, and that's where it all began.
Yeah.
All of that.
Well, and Melbourne has its own huge festival as
Oh,
well.
Melbourne International Comedy Festival is I mean, they say it's the third largest, but I think it's actually bigger than, so I think it's bigger than, yeah, so you've got your Edinburgh, Montreal, and Melbourne, but,
Yeah.
Montreal's mostly those showcase shows uh, and sort of different type of festival. It's more of a
Yeah.
TV-oriented one, and Melbourne's like an umbrella festival. It's got a combination of curated, like the festival itself brings certain comedians from overseas to
Yeah.
showcase them, but then there's the umbrella festival where anybody can enter. You
Okay.
just pay your registration fee and come up with your own venue and whatever, and you can be in the program.
Oh,
So
interesting.
so like Edinburgh works like that, where it's specifically an umbrella festival. Edinburgh
Yeah.
Fringe, anybody can be in it. You just have to find a venue.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So yeah, Melbourne's one of the essential linchpins in the comedy industry in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
and very strong connections with Edinburgh and the international scene, because the festival circuit is something that's we're quite used to, but it's almost new to some of the American comedians. Like, there's people who do the club circuit in America for years and years and years and years and years and years, and they never really come into the festival circuit. They never.
Yeah.
So that's how I know so many comedians across the planet, and that I can go, oh, let's do a gig with Jason in Kuala Lumpur. Let's do
Uh-huh.
that, because you've met them at festivals.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's such a great connector. Like, honest to God, the comedy industry, the world's big, but the comedy industry is relatively small uh, in comparison to other industries, in that you are one to two, probably two, maybe three absolute tops connections
Uh-huh.
away from any other comedian on the face of the planet. Like, for me to be three connections away from a comedian, they would have to be quite an obscure comedian.
Yeah.
So the bigger the name, the closer the connection. Just because, I've got friends who have had chat shows. So they're, you go, oh, well, Chris Rock's one connection away because this person's interviewed him.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I
I like
want
that.
to. That is very cool. That is yeah. I sometimes think about my, how many connections away am I from somebody that I can interview
Yeah.
for a podcast?
And it's, honest to God, it's really close.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you want to
Yeah.
go, oh, I want to interview this person. Oh, well,
Yeah.
I know them. That's a start.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So the ball starts rolling on your stand-up career, and where do you go from there into this person who produces shows and starts connecting people from
Yeah.
across the world?
Where did that start? So I was on a radio show in Melbourne on we've got community radio stations here, which
Mm-hmm.
is, I suppose, the closest to you is student radio,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's not specifically connected to a university. So
Okay.
and the three triple R in Melbourne is huge. Like, well, huge. It's very influential, and certainly pre-internet, it was very influential, and lots of listeners, lots of people, yeah, like-minded individuals.
Mm-hmm.
And so my friend Dave Taranto had a show called The Cheese Shop, named after a Monty Python sketch, and he needed somebody to help him out one comedy festival. So I came on board as ostensibly a producer, production assistant, and then I kind of just stayed and morphed into an on-air role. So Dave had a stand-up night, which I also started working on. It hadn't been going that long before I started being the door bitch, as it was called. The door bitch. That's a great Australia term, the door bitch. Your box office. but at a gig, it was, the door bitch.
Yeah, that's great. I like that.
And so, so that's how I started to get some production experience and programming experience and work out how to do those sort of things.
Mm-hmm.
And so when Dave died in 1999, and I kind of took on the mantle, I suppose, and began putting on my own nights that were similar but different enough because they reflected my tastes more.
Yeah.
And that's where I learned that what the programming style that I tend to have, which is I want to have a good night out. That's the way I would program. Because I'd have people saying, "Oh, can I get a spot?" And I go, "I don't really want to sing." And you'd have to find ways to say no.
Yeah.
Because I'd do that. Sometimes I'd program people and go, "Oh, I'm not enjoying this," and I look over at the audience and go, "Well, they're not enjoying this either. The only person enjoying this is the person on stage who's getting paid for doing stuff that none of us are enjoying." Oh dear. So,
Yeah.
but it just also taught me the importance of working with nice people.
Yeah.
So that's the other part of my programming style. I want to work with nice people. I want to hear different things I haven't heard before. I want to hear perspectives I've not heard before. So, and again, my programming style runs to diversity simply because that's what I want to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way I program. Because I go, "Oh, wow, this is cool. Somebody I've not heard from this sort of part of the community before. I want to hear this."
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, it kind of kept on going after that point.
Yeah. And then you started Local Laughs, I guess not too long after that. And that's very impressive. The longest running solo booked.
Well, that's it. If there's anybody else out there who thinks that there is somebody who, tell me, I'd love to know if there's somebody else who's been the only person, because every other long running room, like the King's Head in London, has had a team behind it.
Yeah.
So people get, I don't know, weeks off.
Yeah.
But so I think the King's Head in London, it's probably the other one that I would say is one of the all-time great long-running rooms.
Yeah. There's a show that's here that's a solo book show, and the way that the host and the booker has set it up is like before COVID, he just wrapped up his 20th season, but it hasn't been 20 years. He would just do shorter seasons, but it was a very long running show.
That's a great idea, doing seasons instead of doing it every week. I'm an idiot. Why didn't I do that? Oh man, that would have been much easier, because it's always been very hard going away. And but on those times when I have dared to go away and like off to the Edinburgh Fringe and left a friend, running it. So I programmed it all in advance and then left somebody else running it. It's like it's like leaving your baby. I imagine. I don't know. I've never had babies. I've only had comedy rooms. So I imagine it's the same sort of thing. And you trust the person, but they'll never do it in the same way.
Yeah.
But I just have to go, "Oh, come on, Janet. Just leave it. See what happens."
So now with all these years of performing and booking and getting to know like the world of comedy, what is your favorite part about being in the comedy world?
I think it is it's the people that I know and meet. I'm frequently struck by how astonishing some of the people I know
Mm.
are. And they might not be the most known person either. So
Yeah.
they're just very special, wonderful people like Twitch. Some of the people who are listening who are on Twitch, then look up Andrew McClelland, DJ Andrew McClelland, who is a wonderful indie DJ and comedian. And
Huh.
he is one of my favorite comedians, but Andrew McClelland is not widely known. There's people who are world famous who know him and love what he does, but he himself is not hugely known.
Mm.
But over last year, then he ended up on Twitch, DJing on Twitch.
Ah.
And so he does things at different time zones. That's good news. So
Yeah.
he has something called Lunch Tunes, which is perfect for the American time zone
Yeah.
because it's at lunchtime in Australia, which is
Yeah.
nighttime for you.
Exactly. Yeah.
So he's one of the most enthusiastic performers. So he's got
Yeah.
a wonderful style. He's very sort of slightly foppish style. Imagine your favorite teacher at school who was like a history teacher or somebody who really brought things to life. He's that person.
Huh.
So he
Okay.
wears on stage, he'll wear, three-piece tweed suits, things like that. So I love it when there's sometimes book shows where I go, I think it's all the well-dressed comedians, this show. So
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah. I might have
Andrew
to do that.
McClelland and yeah, Ethan Cavanagh who wears bow ties. And yes, it's Oliver Clark.
When COVID hit, Australia took it very, very seriously and shut down very strictly.
Mm,
Unlike America.
yeah,
So, uh, I mean, I'm in Austin, which tends to follow, wants to be as safe as possible.
yeah,
So the comics here respected the lockdowns for a few months, and it was by late summer there were shows that were starting to pop up. What was the experience like for Australian comics?
well, we've had quite a varied it's been because we had a state approach. Uh, to give you a perspective, our federal government is not my favourite,
Huh.
shall we say, and I am glad that they were not in. I mean, they're supposed to be in charge of quarantine,
Yeah.
but they formed is they formed what's now known as the National Cabinet, which is all the different premiers, the leaders of the states
Okay.
of Australia, states and territories. So the premiers and etc. So they're the ones helping make decisions, and so the states became in charge of quarantine, but there were only two states that had international this is quite long-winded, sorry. So
Okay.
just to give you the idea. So basically, the international ports where people could come in were Sydney and
Hmm.
Melbourne, and the quarantine became in hotels. Now, hotels are not set up as quarantine stations, and so there were eventual leaks. So mistakes were made because, big learning curve for everybody last year.
Yeah.
And so Melbourne had a big lockdown. So we had a 112-day lockdown.
Whew.
112, 116, something like that. It's a billion years.
A lot. Yeah.
It seemed. So we had a big, hard lockdown. Yeah, it was huge. And meanwhile, the rest of Australia was sort of
Oh,
they're going off and doing their stuff. So comedy was happening all over
around.
Australia.
Oh,
In Melbourne, specifically Melbourne, not even the regional areas of of the state of Victoria, where Melbourne is. It was Melbourne. So there was like the Ring of Steel, it was called, where you're not allowed outside of there, Melbourne. So we were all locked in.
Uh-huh.
And we had a 5-kilometre radius. At one point there was a curfew, and it seemed incredibly harsh. But to be honest, it worked. And, there's a whole bunch of idiots out there, so so it was good to corral the idiots, to be honest. But at the moment, we have got some. The problems have rearisen because New South Wales, where Sydney is, they had a huge outbreak that's spread into Victoria. Their premier didn't want to look. She'd spent too much time just dissing our premier and his methods, and so she couldn't look like she was doing what he was doing, so they haven't locked down properly. Their lockdown includes retail stores still being open and things like that, and so it's not going well at the moment, Valerie.
Oh boy. And
so hopefully the future of somebody's listening to this podcast, they'll be going, what's she talking about? We're fine. We're hoping. So we're currently locked down, and we are hoping to be able to in Victoria be able to come out the other side and then try and keep our borders intact.
Yeah.
What was the beginning of this question? I can't remember now.
I don't know, and I've come up with a million new questions since.
How did Australian comedians react? And so there was a lot of comedy rooms open in Melbourne where they're going, well, this is what we got.
Yeah.
And so I'd taken the comedy online, but for the big lockdown, I stopped doing local laughs because I was getting so much other work which was paying me more. Like local laughs, what I was trying to do was I was trying to support other people, but to my own detriment, so that my determination to pay others meant that I was not getting that much money. And during a pandemic, you really got to concentrate on your number one.
Yeah.
And that's how I just went, I've got to stop because I've got to put a pin in this one and just do special events, and that's it. And so so August last year, I pretty much had to put a pin in local laughs for a few months and just go, guys, I'll come back. And then suddenly I started producing corporate comedy gigs and things like that. So that meant that I was still producing comedy, and I was hosting so many trivia nights and events and things like that. So at the end of 2020, my Zoom hosting tally was 203 shows that I'd hosted on Zoom.
Wow.
And either corporate or ticketed, so all paid work.
Nice.
And I'm still doing it. Even when we all were flitting around earlier this year, free as birds, able to put on live shows again, I was still doing some online shows.
Yeah.
Because it just seems everybody loves it. It's like geography is not an impediment anymore.
Right.
Access is not an impediment. Like if you're got physical disabilities and it's tricky to get out, or if you've got personality disorders that make it difficult, or whatever.
Yeah.
Or if it's cold and you just go, I don't want to go out.
Yeah.
Stay in. Watch a show. Be part of a show.
Yeah, when I was looking at your website and looking at the trivia night, I was thinking, oh, I'd love it if my work did something like this for one of its, because our company is all remote. Nobody's ever worked in a single office.
Yeah.
And so around the holidays, we tend to do, a year-end party. And I was thinking, oh, this would be a really fun idea if we could do something like this.
100% that's what I do because
Yeah.
so when you're doing remote, then people go, oh, another Zoom meeting. But
Uh-huh.
I use Zoom as an entertainment platform, and so I've got lots of different ways and tricks and things like that. So I mean, I use OBS, which many people Twitchers will be
Yeah.
familiar with. So
Yeah.
the open broadcast system. So it makes your Zoom window into a TV screen, basically. So
Yeah.
it's like you're a TV producer. So, and you select varying scenes. You know what it's like.
Yep.
Uh, and so those are the things that just up the ante a little bit. So in Zoom, I use the breakout rooms as team rooms. So your trivia team, your
Uh-huh.
quiz team is in the same room as you, and so you can discuss the answers that way. And it's just a great fun thing to meet workmates that you might not have met properly as well, and
Yeah.
have a social. So
Yeah.
you're doing a work, it's like, a work function,
Yeah.
but
And you're
a
so much
fun one.
fun. Yeah, you're so
Yeah,
much fun. Like your
and
energy is just
yeah, that's it. I bring that fun energy
yeah.
and color and silliness and music. I'll put music into Zoom and just
Yeah.
videos and just muck around. Have a
Yeah.
muck around, as we say in Australia. Just muck around,
Yeah.
That's it. It's really those are the things that I like to be able to be that morale booster,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
and that's what it brings.
it is so much fun to see the people who kind of got over their hesitation of the whole concept of a Zoom show or a
Mm,
Zoom production and embrace it.
mm.
There's one comic who love her so much. Her name's Jasmine Ellis, and she uh, started off in Dallas, Texas, then moved down to Austin, and where she really grew her wings. And then she moved to LA in the middle of the pandemic.
Ah.
And I had interviewed her a couple of times, so I kind of knew her brain a little bit,
Mhm.
and I knew she was so anxious about this move to LA, and all of a sudden all of the stages are shut down. And I invited her to do our show. We were her first Zoom show,
Ah.
and then after, and she was very anxious about it. She didn't know if she really wanted to do it. And after she did ours, because we made it such a nice environment for her, we took care of
Mhm.
everything. We made the technology easy. After that, she started doing a ton of Zoom shows, started getting paid for her shows, and
Great.
it was just so wonderful to see somebody who was willing to kind of get over that initial hesitation
Mm.
and reluctance and just embrace, adapt. Basically,
Yeah.
we weren't asking people to change who they were as comics. We were just saying, for this period of time, just adapt and see what
Yeah.
happens.
Well, and for it's skills that they're not going to go away now,
Mm-mm.
even
Yeah,
though maybe in a few years we'll be going, oh, what pandemic?
yeah,
Then these skills, these new platforms that we've all explored, they're still going to be around.
yeah, yeah. And then
So we,
I mean, you have the advantage that you've gotten to know comics from around the world because you've attended
hmm,
these big festivals. But for me, I haven't, and getting to meet somebody like you, and I just so fell in love with getting the introductions and getting Ryan and Dane
and
booked on our
oh,
show.
by the way, it's Rusty Bertha, not Burger. Oh, well, never mind.
Oh, well, okay. Well, I'll have to re-listen because I have it written down as Berther, but it probably sounded like burger because I had a
Oh,
burger for
okay,
dinner.
all right. Never mind.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no.
whatever. He won't mind. But yeah, and they're all they're comedians who yeah, they found the way, they adapted and
Yeah,
again just jumped in.
yeah,
They jumped in and went for it. And that
yeah,
again, one of the great things from last year, one of the things that I enjoyed being able to do was to help comedians gain that confidence and find a way to that comedy would work in this sort of a platform.
Yeah.
So while I was exploring it myself, but
Hmm.
I had the advantages in that I was exponentially exploring it and discovering what could happen because I was
Yeah.
hosting these 2-hour-long trivia shows. So they, I was having I had lots more flying time than anybody else in
Yeah.
in Australia. Any other? Yeah, I think that's actually what happened was that I ended up with way more flying hours than every other person in the into the Australian
Yeah.
comedy industry.
What are some surprising stories from Australian comics in the face of this COVID? Like you mentioned DJ Andrew and what he's been
Oh,
able to do, but what are some how have some other what are some notable
I
stories of
I still think that Dane Simpson's servo bingo was one of the great things. Now, Dane lives in Wagga Wagga, which sounds funny anyhow.
yeah,
In the middle of New South Wales, it's in regional New South Wales, and one of the things to, of course, know about Australia is that we like to give things nicknames. So the service station, the petrol station, is the servo. So, like
okay.
it's not afternoon, it's arvo, things like that.
Uh-huh.
So servo bingo worked in this way. Dane would be sitting in the, uh, this is all during lockdown. So Dane would be sitting in the inside the window of a brewery slash bar that was opposite the service station, the servo.
Okay.
And anybody who went to a certain takeaway shop and bought their dinner there during the week would be given a bingo card. And so with things written on it like blue Ford, utility, like utility truck, you know,
Uh-huh.
pickup truck with a dog in the back. Things like, and guy in a flannelette shirt, things like that.
Uh-huh.
And so Dane would sit there with the camera was trained on him and you could see to the service station.
Uh-huh.
And so he'd just call, oh, there's a guy going in to so there's a and so you just cross things off your
Uh-huh.
bingo card as they turned up at the servo. So if there wasn't enough, if there wasn't enough action at the servo, they would eventually pull out, numbers out of
Yeah.
the bucket like a bingo game. But
Uh-huh.
that's it. So you'd host that servo bingo, and just that had broadcast on the brewery's Facebook page or whatever.
Oh, that's so cool.
And people would chat, people would comment, and that was it. That was one of the great things. Servo bingo was
Yeah.
very funny. So that was one of the things. People like Ali McGregor, uh, who's an opera singer, cabaret singer, uh, as well. She would put on these, live, sort of, live-ish shows
Uh-huh.
that again was streamed. There was lots of different things like that. But yeah, I think my trivia nights definitely took on a life of their own.
Uh-huh. What are you most looking forward to once you get out of lockdown?
Oh, being, 2 weeks ago, was it only 2 weeks ago? 3 weeks ago when I saw Tim Minchin at Hamer Hall, one of the performance venues here. I remember looking back, we were all masked, uh, but looking back in the crowd and going, there's 1,000 people in here. I love this feeling.
Mm,
I love the feeling of being in a theater
yeah.
like that. Just go, oh, well, this is great. I love being part of this. Or even I like being side stage at a theater, big theater show, and looking out at the audience, just being able to see them, especially if I'm producing like a comedy gala or something like that.
Uh-huh.
And just being so filled with joy, rejoicing in the fact that all of these people are having such a great time. I love that.
Yeah.
And that the comedian is having a great time as well. That's always it. I always see gigs as it's been like being putting on a party.
Uh-huh.
And I love it. And no matter what event I'm doing, that's one of my priorities is like a party host. I want everybody to be having a great time.
Yeah.
So the comedians, the audience, I don't see anything as being that different. I don't have a big separation between audience. I'm the producer. They're the audience. They're the comedians. I'm for me. We're all in it together. Like the
Yeah.
ushers are the people selling the drinks, everything. We're all doing it together. There's no snobbishness there. It's like that's all. We're all part of this, guys.
Yeah. Do
Yeah,
you
we
think
literally are all in it together.
Yeah, that's true. We are. We are. Do you have access to vaccines in Australia? Is
We do, but in fact, we were in a very good position because we, of course, had zero community transmission at
Yeah.
one point. But our federal government did not order enough vaccines and did not
Ooh.
diversify. So we've got AstraZeneca. They put all their eggs in the AstraZeneca basket,
Ah,
and that's not proven to be
yeah.
the best idea because it's got problems with depending on your age and
Yeah.
etc. So they ordered zero Moderna. So we've got Pfizer, which we don't have enough of,
Yeah.
and so only people above, I think, 40 have been able to access the vaccines, except if
Huh.
you're in a vulnerable group. Uh, but there's a huge lot, and then of course there's people who've been very hesitant because vaccine hesitant people
Yeah.
because they keep hearing these stories about the AstraZeneca, so they're understandably nervous about it, and
Yeah.
because they keep hearing things and people are not so that the federal government have not done this well at all. They have failed to hit every single one of their own benchmarks that they set.
Yeah.
So, and now things have blown up, and so we're now suffering those consequences. So, hey, thanks, federal government.
Well, that's where we were last year, and
Yeah.
things got a little bit better.
Yeah. So
But yeah,
we once we have enough vaccines for everybody, then we will be in a much better position.
yeah.
But yeah, things aren't bright at the moment. But you know, I'm I feel okay for myself, but I'm worried for all my comrades.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That, yeah, yep. Yeah. Yep. But yeah, I suppose the interesting thing is that because the Melbourne comedy scene had such a experience last year with our very long lockdown. At that point, it was the longest hard lockdown that had happened anywhere in the world, and
Wow.
so we all had this, I suppose, collective trauma going on in different ways.
Yeah.
So when I went to the Adelaide Fringe Festival earlier this year, oh, Valerie, it was so great. Just like getting on a plane and going somewhere was like mind blowing. I suddenly thought, oh my God, that because everything hit, COVID hit in the final week of the Adelaide Fringe Festival in 2020.
Ah.
And so we got just scraped in the very last day of that festival, and that's
Uh-huh.
when all the lockdown started
Oh,
in the
wow.
initial round. And so, so that was quite phenomenal to go from. I remember sneakily taking a photo of an audience, the very last show that I saw, which was big, fabulous, circus cabaret
Uh-huh.
extravaganza. And I remember thinking, this could be the last audience I see for a long time, and taking a photo of the audience. And it was the last one that I
Oh,
saw for ages. And so returning to the Adelaide Fringe this year was this weird experience because there'd been all this nothing in between.
yeah.
Nothing and everything had happened in between. And
Hmm.
then going back into the Adelaide Fringe where they hadn't had many any great impact, I suppose. It wasn't a huge impact for them. They hadn't had a big lockdown. They'd had restrictions, but it wasn't,
Yeah.
major. And so I got there and I discovered that I was a bit snappy to when not being mean or anything like
Yeah.
that, but I remember at an arts industry breakfast sort of thing, networking thing, and somebody had said, yeah, in Australia we've been really lucky. And I just went, it's not luck. We in Victoria did all the work.
Yeah.
We kept you safe. And I just went, no, we worked at it. We
Oh.
suffered. And they were kind of, okay, sorry, it's just that we went through a lot. So you guys didn't have to. So anyway, but going to Adelaide Fringe and finding, just going into shows and being part of audiences again and experiencing that sort of a arts festival where there's Adelaide Fringe is the biggest, it's the second biggest fringe festival in the world after Edinburgh. And it has got everything like multi-arts. It's got dance, it's got music, it's got comedy, it's got circus. In fact, the modern day circus arts, the genre of circus arts where it's a very distinct genre now. Ground zero for it was the Adelaide Fringe Festival.
Huh.
That's where in the 70s, like the forerunners to Circus Oz and things like that, and performers that have gone on to Cirque du Soleil and such like, they all started there. And so this amazing other art form has stemmed from there and then spread throughout the world.
Huh.
So when you go to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, then all those really big, amazing shows that then go on to Vegas, they most of the people are Australian or Australian adjacent, as in they've teamed up with the Aussies.
Yeah.
On these shows. Yeah, it's really, I love those. And again, I love the connections. I love being able to go, oh, and this connects to that and that goes to that.
Yeah. Well, speaking of connections, we're going to start wrapping up, and we are going to, as part of our vacation series, and since everybody under the moon, keep your list reasonable. But one of the things that I like to ask our guests during this vacation series is, tell us somebody that we should be paying attention to from Melbourne. You gave us DJ Andrew McClelland. Who are some other names that we should be paying attention to?
Oh, well, I've already sent some to you. Jude Perl, who is from Austin, Texas.
Ah, that's right. You had mentioned her to me.
And we never quite got her on your show. Jude I was going to be producing her show in Edinburgh Fringe last year. And we thought, oh, well, maybe we'll do it in 2021. No, definitely not 2021. Maybe 2022. But she's going to be huge. She'll be worldwide.
Yeah.
She's one of those performers. Musical, comic, great work on a piano. Yeah. Fantastic voice. Really good. Look her up on YouTube. You will not be disappointed.
Right.
So if you, in that, if you like this person, you will like this person. If you like Tim Minchin, you will like her. Reuben Kroom, here's another one. Reuben Kaye, he goes by. Reuben Kaye is another phenomenon. Again, not stand-up, it's cabaret comedian.
Okay.
Over the top makeup and very theatrical and fabulous. Geraldine Quinn. Oh, I'm talking all about the musical comedians now. Geraldine Quinn is again a phenomenon. She does hilarious songs and is one powerful singer. Extraordinary stuff. So her videos are really great as well. So she did a lot of videos last year. So mostly it's her, but over the top makeup and everything. So I like the theatricality. I love the theatricality there. Kirsty Webeck is a stand-up comic. She's follow her on Twitter. She is wonderful. She is a wonderful tweeter. And we did a big Zoom show last Friday that sold out. How can a Zoom show sell out? Well, if you've only bought the 500-person large meeting add-on, you can't go over that. And so we sold. So I was the tech producer on that one. Yeah, I've got a reputation now, Valerie. I am very good at producing Zoom shows. And there's an actual art to it to make it feel like it's a party. And so I always do them in Zoom meeting, not Zoom webinar, because Zoom webinar is more efficient, I suppose, but you don't have the audience connection in that you can't see the audience.
Right.
And some people do it where they invite some audience members to be in the front row so they're unmuted, and so they're kind of part of it. But I like to do it in Zoom meetings. You have to set so they can't unmute, but you can invite some people to, if they've got headphones and that sort of thing. You got to be in a quiet environment. You got to have your headphones on. You got to be by yourself so you don't chat to somebody else or your pet. So people, lonely people in libraries, you're our prime demographic. With a moderate chuckle, but not all over the top one. And so you have them unmuted to act as soundtrack, and I'm always unmuted, so I chuckle along as well. So Kirsty, we did this big show that had to have an extra session put on last Friday.
Wow.
So that's going to happen again Friday coming up. Because I've realised that a live gig that I'm supposed to be doing, Cinema Fiasco, which we haven't even talked about. Cinema Fiasco, I do not think it's going to... I don't think we're going to be out of lockdown in time for it. Never mind. So anyway, Kirsty's definitely somebody who you'll be getting a lot... You'll be seeing a lot more of. There's so many people. Who else? There's people who are nationally famous in Australia, like Claire Hooper, who's lovely. She's in the one of the co-hosts of the Great Australian Bake Off. There's, Ivan Aristeguieta, everybody's favourite Venezuelan comedian in Australia, who's a great friend of mine. We have a show together. We did one last night, which is called About This Much, because he's also a very, very good cook. And so it's an interactive cook-along show on Zoom. So you will, so you buy a ticket, you get emailed a list of ingredients. It was developed during our lockdown, so it had to be stuff that you could buy at the supermarket because we were restricted to a 5-kilometre radius. And so all supermarket stuff, you go out, you buy your food, everybody logs in together. He shows you how to cook. We've got 3 iPhones set up in his kitchen. So, one on a tripod, one above the stove, one on the bench. I switch between the cameras and kind of like a TV director.
Yeah. Wow.
And then I've got all the audience's screens to choose from as well, where we'll have a look at what somebody's doing. So I'll play some music and everybody will show their dishes to the camera and I switch between them. And so that's all spotlight. So it's the thing that I do when I'm producing these shows or teching these shows is treat it like a party.
Yeah.
Everybody's having a great time. Look at us.
Is there anything about the Melbourne comedy scene that we should know about if we're comparing, our respective comedy towns? What should we know about Melbourne in general?
Well, look, I've said it before. The quote about, I remember somebody saying, "What's the difference between the Sydney scene and the Melbourne scene?" And the answer was, Sydney, it's business. Melbourne, it's like a giant dysfunctional family. So, we like to hang out together. I mean, that happens in Sydney too, but it does have a slight difference like that. There's some of us have been there for so long. We are like the matriarchs, the patriarchs of the family.
Yeah.
No, we are those individuals. Like I'm one of the people who I hope that I hope that I'm a kind person. I'm not a easy touch, but I'm not mean,
Yeah.
deliberately mean. I mean, I'm not nice to everybody, but
Yeah.
but in general, I'm quite helpful.
Yeah.
Quite,
Absolutely.
I'm a reasonably good person. But, you know, I'm fallible. Not all the time. There's some people that I just go, "Oh, I don't like them and I don't know why. Oh, well, never mind." I'm just normal like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's it. I think that there's a camaraderie. There's a certain camaraderie
Uh-huh.
with oddballs. A lot of oddballs. Like quirky. It's a lot quirkier than there's a lot of scenes that are very club style stand up.
Yeah.
So it's all polished and very good, but at the same time it's not really that interesting. So I love the oddballs, the
Uh-huh.
weirdos, the outsiders, people who are outside for some reason. As soon as we discover them, then we drag them in. Just go, "Oh, you're cool. Yeah, we like you." And again, that's probably why the Melbourne scene just lends itself to diversity.
Yeah.
Is that we that's like the certain comedy rooms like mine where we do just like difference. We
Right.
like difference.
Yeah. Very good.
So maybe that's it. I would say perhaps perhaps we've got that.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Well, are you ready for your closing question?
Oh, I'm preparing myself, Valerie. Here we go.
One word to describe your future.
Oh, that's hard. That's harder than my past because I have a feeling my future is also going to be varied. I think I'm just going to continue. I'm making this up. Honestly, I'm making this shit up as I go along. I don't have a plan. I'm just going. Oh, I'll do this now. If I had a plan, last year would have really completely ruined things. But I just went. I'll do this. Oh, I'm doing. You know what? Here's my 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 future chameleon.
Ah, yes.
Just go. Oh, it's this, is it? All right, I'll do this now.
Uh-huh.
Except in my way. I'll just
Right.
find the way that I'll do it. So thank goodness, I can scrape together the resources.
Yes.
Maybe that's another word for it. Resourced. And that doesn't have to be monetarily resourced. It's
Yeah.
the connections I've made.
Yeah.
The connections I've made have been part of my toolkit of survival.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
There's my collateral. the people that I've helped along the way or know or am grabbing and helping them up.
Yeah.
Because I like to do. Yeah, I think that's what we all need to do. Really, it's not about climbing to the top of the ladder. It's grabbing some people and bringing them up as well.
Yeah.
So everybody, let's do it together. Yeah, look at us.
Yep, exactly. Well, that is a great note to wrap up on, and that will be a wrap on Comedy Wham Presents Janet McLeod. Tell us where we can find you on social media or what we can keep up with.
You can find, if you go to Planet Janet Trivia on Facebook, then you can find out my trivia gigs, my regular pub gigs. They're the ones that I, it's basically my live shows that have been locked down and I just take them online. But I also do specials and things like that. So that's a good place. And on Twitter, it's at Janet McLeod, and it's probably that. Instagram, I can't remember. I'm not very active on certain on certain social media platforms. I got to try harder. Oh, Valerie, I got to try harder.
You're so busy.
I'm such a word of mouth person.
Yeah, and you're so incredibly busy.
Yes, it's true. I had had 7 gigs this weekend.
Oh my
We're in
gosh.
full lockdown and I still had 7 gigs.
Wow.
All
Wow.
online. No, nothing free. And this is the other thing that I learned. I learned very early on. Like last year I made the rule, just make
Nothing
everything
free.
ticketed.
Yeah.
Everything's got to be
smart.
ticketed or paid. So that was the rule, and it worked. So well done,
Smart.
well done,
Yes,
past
yes.
Janice. Well done on that one. And thank goodness for Zoom. That's all I can say. Thanks,
That's
Zoom.
right. Yes, because it's allowing us to have this conversation.
Yay.
Well, we hope you've enjoyed learning about how Janet got to be the comedic genius and fairy godmother. Is that what it was?
The fairy godmother. The fairy godmother of Melbourne comedy, possibly beyond, seeing as I've got an international focus.
Yes, yes. The comedic genius that you heard today, just as much as I have. This has been Comedy Wham Presents Janet McLeod. I'm Valerie, and that's been funny. Thank you, Janet.
Thank you, Valerie.